Welcome everybody to the iconic conversation series, our March conversation on why a career in tech isn't just for techies. I want to start by acknowledging the First Nations people of the lands across the whole of Australia and acknowledge their enduring connection to country, knowledge and stories, and to pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. I'm in Sydney and the owners of the land here are the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. I'm Medina Jacobs, and together with Bobby Marlab, my partner, we started Mentor Walks 5 years ago with the intention of bringing quality mentoring experiences to women everywhere to drive a gender equal world. And as yesterday was International Women's Day, and in the spirit of this year's theme, Break the Bias, I'd like to encourage all of you to do one thing, big or small, for another woman after your experience here with Mentor Walks today. It could be something small like checking on someone that you see who you think may be struggling, or something really big like calling out an injustice or a bias if you see it playing out in front of you. It's something we encourage all the women who come to Mentor Walks to do. And please, I'll remind you again at the end, but if you could do one thing big or small for another woman after leaving here today, that would be really wonderful. The very first Mentor Walks conversation series was in mid-2020 when some of our mentors came to us asking what they could do to support the women in our community in the face of this global pandemic that was unfolding in front of us. The first conversation series was led by Lynley Edwards, and it was on a topic that was front of mind for everybody at the time, which was fear of losing your job. Since then, our mentors have continued to give their time and share their experiences and expertise around areas of concern and interest for our mentees. I am very proud to say that this is our 18th conversation series. All the previous sessions are up on our Mentor Walks YouTube page. And today I am incredibly proud to announce in person, we've done it on socials already, that we've formed a new partnership with the Iconic, which allows us to bring you these monthly free to attend conversation series events. The Iconic is also our Sydney partner this year. So thank you, Erietta and your team, for supporting Mentor Walks and for supporting our community, which allows us to step up and allows us to be there for people who need us, which has been so incredibly important over the last 2 years. And just a side note as well, Erietta was one of our very first mentors when we started back in 2016. And in her former roles, she also supported us by partnering with us to bring a few walks to our Sydney community. So Erietta, thank you for being so consistent and for being here for us all the way through.
No problem.
So now what you're all here for, our conversation series on why a tech career isn't just for techies. We're honoured to have 3 incredible women from the Iconic with us today to share their experiences, explain their perspective on the tech industry, and share their career journeys and tips and make us think about the tech space from a broader perspective. For those of you who don't know, although I'm sure that's impossible, the Iconic is one of Australia's largest fashion, sportswear and kidswear and e-commerce retailer, showcasing over 1,000 brands and more than 60,000 items through an online retail experience. The Iconic's focused on a seamless shopping experience, growing their assortment according to their customers' needs, and they have a huge focus on sustainability and community. And personally, the Iconic is the first place I go to. I don't love shopping in a bricks and mortar store, and the Iconic's the first place I go to if I need anything. So traditionally, if you worked in tech, you worked for either a hardware or a software company, and you were either an engineer or had a STEM background. But now tech enables access to so many more people and facilitates so many business operations that the definition of what it means to work in tech has really broadened. There's a national shortage of tech skills out there and great career opportunities in the space. But if you don't have a traditional tech background, you may not be applying for those jobs because you don't think they're relevant to you. And just in prep for this, I had a quick look at the current job openings at the Iconic. It shows there are currently 39 roles open and only 13 of them are in traditional engineering and tech roles. So there's a lot of opportunity. And there's also such a broad definition these days of what it is to really be a tech business. And there are nowhere near enough candidates to fill them. So today we're going to talk to you about why the tech industry isn't just for techies. And our guests are going to tell you about their stories of working in this space, the skills and attributes they've learned along the way. And we're going to look at different ways of thinking about a career in the tech space. While I introduce our beautiful panelists, Sophie's going to put up a quick poll just to get an idea of where you're all at in our audience. Please just take a minute to answer the questions. There's only a couple of them while I introduce these 3 incredible women. And then we'll have a conversation based around the questions you've asked as you've registered. And if we have time, then we will get to some additional questions at the end. So if you have them, please drop them into the chat. We'll try and address as much as we can here. And if we can, then we'll go to some questions at the end as well. So Erietta,
Yes.
Erietta Berchtold is the current CEO of The Iconic, a position she took up in 2019. Since then, she's been instrumental in the expansion of the business into new categories, particularly sports, beauty, home, kids and toys. And she's very passionate about sustainability in retail and platform businesses. Erietta has over 20 years experience in retail and tech. Prior to joining The Iconic, she was the MD of the sports division at Super Retail Group, where she led several businesses, including Rebel, for over 7 years. She's also a director on the board of Sydney FC. She's a leader who continues to break grounds in traditional industry while also prioritising her family, which I know from personal experience isn't something that's always easy to do. Erietta is one of the few female CEOs in ANZ, and she's committed to using her voice and profile to drive positive change. Thank you, Erietta. Meagan Omani, also from The Iconic, is the Director of Security. She's been in tech for 15 years, working with a variety of startups and wearing many hats. Meagan joined The Iconic in 2015, seeing the company from its startup roots to where it stands today. As the company has grown, she's shed her hats and been able to focus on her area of expertise, which is security. Meagan's own path was far from straightforward, and mentoring other women, working with them to find their career paths, no matter how winding, is something that she's passionate about paying forward. Thanks for joining us, Meagan. And Erietta Sapounakis heads user experience at The Iconic, again, something that I'm very familiar with, having been a user many, many times. So thank you for making the experience so positive. This is a design discipline that is all about what people need from technology and how they use it. Previously, Erietta was head of customer experience at community services provider Uniting, a design leader in product development at Telstra, and consulted to companies including Westpac, CBA, BlueScope Steel, and Foxtel. Erietta is passionate about helping teams collaborate more effectively through a shared understanding and focus of customers. So now that we know a little about these wonderful women, let's get into some of the detail. I'm going to ask each of you to tell us about the career path that led you to this point. And Erietta, we'll start with you.
Right. Well, hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. And I know there's a few men that have joined today as well, because they reached out to me and said, is it okay? Are we allowed to join as well? So welcome. Look, my career is a very strange one in a sense. When I was at school, I had a variety of jobs, casual jobs and part-time jobs whilst I was at school, mostly in retail, in ice cream shops. I was a perfume bomber at Grace Brothers, as it was known back then. I had a stint working in a laundry at a nursing home, not a career highlight. That was a very difficult job, but mostly in that retail sort of environment. But when I actually thought about my career and what I wanted to do with myself, I thought I was going to do law. That was where I did all of my work experience at school, like in law firms and hanging out at the district courts and things like that. But actually, I wasn't a good enough student. Or it's not that I wasn't a good enough student. I wasn't a traditional student. And actually in a function like law, you really needed to be quite a traditional student to be able to excel in that sort of field. And that was
get
just
the marks early and consistently.
Exactly, right? And you need to be very diligent and have that attention span to sit and read a lot of stuff. And that's just not actually a great way for me to do learning. And so I actually pivoted my focus then. And when I finished school, went and did journalism. Journalism is an amazing course to do, just as a side note, because it teaches you a lot of life skills, like how to have conversations with people, how to be good at writing, you know, how to touch type. I learned to type, which was very useful. Lots of sort of, you know, different things. And I did journalism, and that led me to a career in PR. And then that, you know, led me to other sort of jobs. And what a lot of people don't know is that all of the jobs I had early in my career, the common denominator in all of those was tech. So that first PR job I had was actually for a computer games company called Activision. So dealing with software programmers and game writers and, you know, just very different sort of people than what I'd ever experienced before. And then that spun me out into a sales job. And that sales job happened to be at a company called Tech Pacific back then. And shout out, I saw some people logging in here from back in the day, from back then. So yeah, so Tech Pacific, now called Ingram Micro. But I had to become essentially an expert on Microsoft, Symantec, iOmega. Do you remember iOmega zip drives and things? Like
Yes.
Netgear. I saw Sue from Netgear log on here before. Hello, Sue. You know, just all of these different tech sort of products, and loved that sort of world. And then that spun me into Harvey Norman, which you could think was a retail sort of role. But actually, I was working in the computer division at Harvey Norman as a buyer there. So then had to figure out how to get consumers wanting to buy more tech products across a whole plethora of categories. So tech was a bit of a common denominator for me, a tech and retail sort of balance. And then, you know, did some other stints at Rebel, etc. And I feel like I've come full circle because I've now landed, I think, where I was always meant to be, at the Iconic, which is this equal parts tech and retail sort of business. And, you know, I think, you know, what I learned on the shop floor back then is still relevant now. You know, you just need to be curious, be obsessed about customer service, learn to problem solve. And, you know, it's, yeah, so that's kind of my very long and winding path to CEO of the Iconic.
Amazing, thank you. But I mean, I agree with you. You do pick up things along the way that you keep with you. The most important things stick with you, and the ones that are irrelevant just kind of slip away.
Yeah, yeah.
Meagan, tell us how you got here.
Well, and yeah, it was a different path, obviously. As I said, it wasn't exactly the straightest path. When I was 10, I was convinced I was going to be a doctor, like dead convinced. Absolutely, that was absolutely what I was going to do. No budging me from my path. So I went into university studying biochemistry because I thought, hey, this is really interesting. And it's a path to medicine, right? It's a really obvious feeder into that medicine. So whilst it was STEM, it's a very different STEM from the technology space at the time. But I got to about my junior year, and I was speaking to an auntie of mine, an older auntie of mine, who happened to be in medicine. And when I heard about her journey, I'm like, actually, that's not for me. That's not where I want to go. What she has to deal with is not, that doesn't sound fun. This is how like my glamorized view.
Not like Doogie Howser or one of those TV shows.
Exactly. I was going to say it's probably put on me by the TV shows I watched of what a doctor was going to be. And you know, I'm from the US, so it's a lot of paperwork. And it was like, this isn't what I want to do. And then I sat back and looked at my degree and I said, well, biochemistry is it's fascinating. It's utterly fascinating subject, but I don't want to do that either. So I had to sit back and kind of go, what do I want to do with my life? I had no clue. My mom's in the back of my ear going, you should do computers. You're really good with that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I'm 20 years old, whatever, mom.
And then you were definitely like, mom said it, so I'm not doing it.
There was a little bit of that, absolutely a little bit of that. So I started taking some just odd jobs because, you know, you need to make money when you're a 20-something-year-old. And eventually I got a job in a software company doing nothing to do with the software at all, but I kind of thought, let's see what this world is all about. And I got hooked. I absolutely fascinated by the technology behind it. And I went out and I educated myself. I improved my skills. I improved my education. I went out and took formal courses and then began, when a role opened up in a technical role there, I jumped in and I said, I'm going to go for that. If they say no, whatever. They've said no, but I actually got the role. And then I was able to get more education and further on. And so I worked in that startup for quite a few years and moved on to other startups within it, specializing more and more in security. But a lot of times when you're working in startups, right, you're doing a bit of everything.
Can you tell us just a little bit about the security function and what that really focuses on?
Well, ultimately, we want to make sure our customers, employees, and company, that the information about those are as absolutely safe as possible. And I mean in that order, right? It is customers, employees, and then the company information. Amazing. In that order that we care about. So we want to make sure it's as protected and that information is as safe as possible. And obviously being online, that's our world is out there. And so it's a you know, big area to try and make sure that we are protecting everything to the best of our ability.
Definitely. Thank you. That's amazing. Erietta, how did you get here?
How did I get here? To the huge disappointment of my immigrant parents, I had no aspiration to be a lawyer or a doctor. So yeah, out of school, I studied fine arts and then design, went to design college. And when I was starting out as well and studying, like the term user experience didn't even exist at all. And it existed in a little kernel, in a little pocket of computer science called human-computer interaction. But I wasn't a sciencey person at all. So I wouldn't have even looked into that pocket of courses to go looking there thinking that's a role for me when I was, 17 and 18 and wondering what to do. But yeah, so anyway, I started my study to get into the field then, and you know, UX had other kind of names. Its terminology actually still changes a lot. You needed a portfolio. It's really hard to build a portfolio when you're starting out. So I stayed working full-time in retail actually for a couple of years. I was a sales rep, which was nice to come back to now because I'm in retail, so I'm referring to that kind of original career. But I got my break at a little startup, enabled me to build a portfolio, led to the next job, which was at a web development company. And when I was starting out, I went to a lot of events and meetups to get a scan of the industry and work things out, work out what the jobs were, kind of think about what I was curious about and what skills I needed to develop. And that led me into more kind of human-centered design and that kind of research-based path that I took myself on. So it's kind of half research, half creative, or, you know, kind of tangible design. And that's kind of what led me here. But yeah, I've practiced kind of what I do in different contexts. So in a technology context, in a consulting context, mostly for banks, you know, at a telco in-house agency side. But yeah, anyway, fun to be at the Iconic, which is a nice blend of lots of different things, and, you know, very tech, but very lots of other kind of disciplines as well coming together.
Well, I think, you know, when I think back to what happened when the Iconic first hit the scene, it was very, very different to how it is now. Back then, people didn't really buy from catalogs. Online purchasing and e-commerce was, you know, people who were at the experimental edge of the tech space and in the startup world trusted it and used it. But beyond that, everybody was still going into their local shopping centers and buying all their stuff in there. So it's come a very, very long way. And user experience is such a huge part of that, because the easier it is for people and the more seamless it is for people to be able to have that shopping experience, the more they're gonna go to that space. So Erietta, you mentioned that you went to a lot of meetups. If people want to do that kind of thing, like what do you look for? Where do you go? What are the keywords that you search?
Yeah, right. I was like, I still am a bit. I was totally obsessed with meetups. I loved them. Keywords. Oh, look, in the design space, there's a great meetup called IXDA. It's a great community. Most things are free. They do some training, which is paid, but it's an amazing resource. If you're into content strategy, which has a crossover with UX and tech, there's a Sydney meetup as well. There are agile meetups, but I mean, there's so much. But yeah, if you look up interaction design or user experience, agile, you'll...
Amazing. Thank you. We try as much as we can to give really like practical things that people can go away and do, because there's so many amazing ideas that come through, and it's really nice for people to be able to walk away and then actually go and do their research and jump straight into it. So I want to turn a little bit now to what you find has surprised you about working in this space and what you wish you'd knew or had asked early on. Like, I know sometimes you get into an area and you think it's going to be one way, but actually it's completely different. And so for the people who are looking at either moving into the tech world or moving around within it, what do you wish you knew or had asked earlier? I think, Meagan, we'll start with you on that one.
So I moved into the pure tech, you know, system administration, you know, big, you know, Linux kernel screens and stuff like that. And it appears on the surface to be very binary, right? It's, you know, you do this way, you do that way, it breaks or it fixes, whatever. But what surprised me was the creativity that you can still have in something that is so technical, because you're fixing something, right? But you can fix it in 25 different ways. Which way is going to be the best way to fix it, and have that license to figure out, to work through the issues and use that creative muscle in your brain that you wouldn't expect to use when it's a purely technical field. But what surprised me, and it ties into that creativity, is how do you tie that creativity? How do you tie that problem solving into what the business needs? Because you're typically going along and you're going, all right, this is my thing, I'm doing my thing, right, move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
Why are you doing that thing? Yeah. Why are you doing that particular thing? What is it the business is trying to achieve? And I wish I had known this when I started it, because a lot of times we can come up with a better solution when we're working together than either side can come up individually. And so having that collaboration with where the business is trying to go and what the tech solution is going to help the business to do along that path is really a good avenue that I wish I had known way back when I started in this journey, because I think it would have helped me to get the businesses I was in further, to get myself further, and to make my solutions a lot more, I don't know, fit and just funner, as opposed to just grinding away and here's my delivery, off I go.
Thank you. That's amazing. How about you, Erica? Erica, sorry. I know, because you've gone through so many different spaces. Like, what surprised you about this?
Myself? Or,
yeah.
Sorry, I thought you said Erietta.
No, we are definitely going to get to Erietta as well.
Oh, I think if I think about when I joined the Iconic and just thinking about, wow, I've got to lead a tech team for the first time kind of in my career, and trying to get my head around that, and wondering what I was going to add to that, it was the surprise of realizing that there were more similarities between, say, myself coming from a more traditional retail background and the tech team than what there were differences. Because at the end of the day, we're all just trying to solve a problem or meet a customer, you know, like we're all just customer obsessed, and we just come at it from different sort of angles. But, you know, I really found that a great environment to join, that there could be this mixing of ideas and diversity that could come to the table and actually get along and not be looking at each other in a disparaging sort of way, go, well, she's not very techie, is she? Or me saying, oh, they're just techie and don't understand the customer bit. Like, we actually could all really mesh together very well. So
that's amazing. Thank you. And what about you, Erietta?
Well, two things come to mind, because I'd like to respond to something that Meagan said as well. But I wish when I was it's not actually just when I was starting out, because I still have to fight this tendency a little bit, but especially when I was starting out, I wish I had the foresight to know that you don't have to try and know and learn everything all at once. Like, there's so much time. You can learn things as, you know, that sort of type of project emerges, but you feel like you don't know anything at the start, and that can feel really intimidating. But there's a lot of time. There's also stuff you need to kind of unlearn as you're working too sometimes, which is really important. But that process of learning and unlearning, it's constant, and especially in tech, it's ever evolving. So you've really got to enjoy learning and be fairly self-directed with learning in whatever formal or informal ways you kind of pursue that. But definitely kind of being patient with myself I wish I had someone in my ear telling me that. But in response to something that Meagan just said about collaboration, like, I completely agree. Things are always better. And Erica spoke to this too, when different disciplines come together to work on a problem. But depending on how an organization is structured, collaboration can be a radical act in an organization. So we'll really test the muscle of an organization and see, okay, how siloed is it? Or how matrixed is it? How open are people? So that's something, you can't take collaboration for granted. I think it's something that you've got to shape, facilitate, and nurture as well.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of it comes back to the culture of the business and what's happening in the values of the business as well. If you understand that people learn together, grow together, and can contribute to each other, then it makes such a big difference to then encouraging that to actually happen on the ground.
Absolutely.
Amazing. Thank you. So I know that that Erica, you have worked in tech all the way along, even though it's not a traditional tech role that you fulfill, and that you don't have that STEM background. But how technical in the role that you're in now do you really need to be? And how much do you think people really need to have that STEM or engineering background, or just an appreciation of it? How do you think women should be thinking about it? So say, for example, for women who are with us today, what should they be thinking about if they want to get into the tech space, whether they are or are not traditionally trained?
I mean, I think what you've heard from Erietta, Meagan, and myself is that you don't actually have to come at it from a pure tech perspective. Like, there's many roads that can lead you to this path. And look, technical skills helpful in some roles. Like, if you're an engineer or a web developer or something, well, yes, there's going to be a certain amount of technical skill that's required. But if you're going to move into more, say, the project management side of things, then it's probably less technical. But I could say that for a lot of roles, that technical skill is less relevant these days. I think it's more about mindset than what it is technical skill. And, you asked me about my role, like how much technical skill do I actually need? Look, actually very little. My technical skill is kind of there in the background. It helped get me to this point. But actually my job is more now about leadership skills and bringing good people together, fostering great talent, giving people the platform in which to develop themselves, collaborate, do some really great work. That's more relevant for me in my role now than what any of the technical skills, I learned along the way is. So I think technical skill, it's important, but don't focus just on that. There's a much broader skill set that you could be learning and adopting that will get you much further in your career than if you just, go at things from a technical skill perspective.
I agree. And I think as well, that really helps on that collaborative point that Meagan was making as well.
Yeah.
If you're very narrow-minded and you've only got one focus, A, it makes it hard to move around, and B, it makes it hard for you to fit in with other teams and work together to get a better result for the company.
I mean, when we're recruiting those roles that you spoke about before, I mean, probably some technical background will get you an interview with us, but actually we're going to look a lot more at your attitude, your level of curiosity, your ability to problem solve, your ability to collaborate with others. That's going to be far more important and more of a determining factor as to whether you get the role or not, as to what your actual technical skills are.
Yeah, okay, that's really good to know, because I think a lot of times people just read exactly what's in the job description, and they don't think outside of that, and they aren't really creative about what they can bring to the table outside of exactly what's on the page or on the screen.
Yeah.
So Meagan, what do you suggest for women who aren't in the tech space at the moment but would like to be?
Tech is big. It's bigger than when I started.
I know, every time I say it, I keep thinking everything's tech. Like even my other business, like besides Mentor Walks, it's a tech adjacent business, but we rely on tech to get everything done. I wouldn't say we're a tech business, but you need to have a level of tech savviness to do the majority of what we do here. So yeah, you're right.
Absolutely.
Very broad.
We all touch tech. We're touching tech a lot more than we did 2 years ago because of the nature of fires, floods, and pandemics that we're having here in Australia. But
exactly.
it is so big. It's bigger than where I was when I started my career. In 5 years, it's going to be bigger even still. The definition is so fluid. What is tech? And it doesn't have to be that whole, it's just the super technical skills. It's just the engineers. It's just the network people. It does encompass a much greater area than it ever once did in terms of the definition. So, I don't think that getting into tech is in some ways dissimilar to getting into any other field.
Yeah.
You have to want to do something. You have to be passionate about it. You have to want to wake up in the morning and go read about it. As Erietta said, be self-directed in your learning about it. And no one's going to jump into a technical role and say, absolutely, I know what I want to do in 10 years time. I don't know what I want to do when I grow up. My father's not grown up. I'm not grown up yet. I don't know what I want to do. And I can't directly because I don't know where tech is going, but I'm learning always. And so find out what makes you tick, find out what parts of it interest you, find people to talk to about it, learn as much as you can, and then start getting that advice about how to take the next steps into it. Don't jump blindly, take the time, figure out what you love.
Can you share with us where you get some of your learnings from? Like what are the who do you read and what are you looking at on a week-to-week basis to keep your knowledge broad, and who are you listening to?
I have to be all over every kind of security blog, podcast, everything, because the news changes on an hour-by-hour basis about where things might be headed and the trends that we have to look out for. So I keep my eyes on the topical ones, the ZNets and stuff like that, but also go into hacker newses and more technical forums from that perspective. But my reading isn't just focused on the security stuff. Erietta from a different conversation recommended the Checklist Manifesto as a book. It's not a technical skill book, but it's a book that will help down as a leader and to grow in my career. So it's not just only about reading the technical books as well. You want to go out there, you want to find your Simon Sinek's, you start with your whys, and just really try and get your head around who you are and what you're doing in addition to the technical skills.
Yeah. That's fantastic. Thank you. Do either of you have anything else to add to that? It's really like really around like, what do you suggest for people suggesting to make a move, and how can they kind of move a little sideways or upwards from where they are now?
I would recommend that people tune into the vernacular and specific ways of working of tech teams. And I'm talking about agile in particular, which is the kind of predominant way of working framework in tech departments or tech companies. If you don't know, like everyone's heard the term, yes, it's a set of principles and it's a manifesto, but it's also a very heavily codified way of working. So I would, I'm talking about like Scrum and Kanban. So I would look into that, see what that means, think about what that, how that's different to how you're currently working. Because if you want to step into a tech context that's practicing agile without a full understanding of that, and you're immersed in it, and that's your kind of day to day, it might seem a bit. It can feel chaotic and rigid at the same time. So you really need to understand the framework and the fundamentals of that. I think that's really important.
Can you give us like just a little high level of agile? You've brought it up a few times.
Yeah. Yes. Agile, I think one of the kind of core concepts of agile is about releasing value in increments. So that's kind of one core concept of agile. What that means, as opposed to waterfall, where you're releasing everything with a big bang and you're waiting to the end, it's about working out how can you conduct little experiments and get something to the end user or customer sooner to prove the point. And that point could be, is it a technical proof of concept? Okay, can we get this working? That point could be, do we have a market signal for this? So you're trying to find product market fit. There's lots of other ways to test though. As a user experience designer, I've also got to reconcile, often debate the merits of market research, user experience research to that kind of lean startup agile kind of approach to finding product market fit. But a lot of it is around getting product out in live production as soon as possible. I'd say that's the most important kind of
now, Dina, just to add,
of it.
Just to expand on that a bit, where it gets tricky, right? So you know how I said the iconic is equal parts retailer as what it is tech business. So when you're in a business like ours and you've got half the business that wants to work in an agile sort of way, but then you've got another half of the business that actually can't work in an agile sort of way, because I've got buyers, and you'd understand this from your own business, right?
Absolutely.
The lead times of product and stuff, right? So we've got product, 70% of our product is bought probably 8 or 9 months in advance and housed in our warehouse. So we own it and we love it and we've got our cash tied up in it. Now, that cap management team need to know that not that this product feature is going to be ready maybe on this date or like a test of it on it. They need to know we're ready to hit go because we've bought the product for it. And if we can't sell that product in that volume that we've expected, then shit, we're going to have to, we're going to have to,
it's all right, we're all friends.
It's been a long week and it's only Wednesday, but we're going to have to clear through that product really at quite a discount in order to move that along, free up our cash, be able to, make room for the next sort of product. So having to find that balance. So where I've had to learn to be a bit of an interpreter or bridge in our business is how to allow our tech business to work in that real agile way, but then have other parts of our business work in, and now that we're a public company as well, and we've got to sign up for dollars, we're delivering these sales, this profit this year, and you don't get to say, oh, sorry, that squad was a bit late working on that, or it didn't work out the way we wanted, so the results didn't come in. Like, you have to deliver your results. So how do I give everybody a way of working that suits them and still be able to deliver the results? So there's a bit of a balancing act there as well.
Absolutely. And I think I find as well in those two spaces in my own business that often people are speaking different languages. So
Totally.
it's the bridge, it's the interpreter, it's
Yeah.
making sure that everybody's sympathetic to everybody else and everybody
Yeah.
understands how they are a part of the whole,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
not just going after their own KPIs or,
Yeah.
or trying to hit their own targets.
That's where culture is important, right? Because if you've got the right
Definitely.
culture and the right people in the business, then you can have those different ways of working exist.
Definitely. So I think it's a good time to talk about suggestions that all of you have that could help people maximize their experiences within the businesses or the companies that they're working in. So like, what do you look for? What are the skills and the experience? And I know it differs from role to role, but Meagan, if we can start with you and in the area that you're in, what are you looking for when you bring people into your team or when you see them move and move up in their space?
Curiosity. No, I mean, because within
Yeah.
tech, particularly in security, but within anywhere in tech, you're going to be presented with a wide range of problems every day. And you need to have that curiosity to kind of go, how do I solve this? What do I do here? How do I move this forward? And because it allows you to push yourself, right? You
Yeah.
need to have that ability to kind of go, I see this problem space. How do I step into that? How do I push myself into this area that I'm not really totally familiar with, maybe not fully comfortable with, but actually try and push myself into that space. And having that step in and pushing and trying something new and not being afraid of your failures, because failure is just learning, right? It is just a learning
Definitely.
opportunity. We all fail. Every one of us fails, probably on a daily basis, to some degree or another. But we always need to keep pushing and keep that curiosity alive. And that's one way that I found those people that are really successful. They're always pushing for something new. They're always trying something new.
But
Yeah.
thank God we fail sometimes, because if you didn't, like, I've learned more from the stuff I got wrong than from the stuff I
Yeah.
got right.
Definitely,
so, you know,
I
and
agree with that.
Yeah, so you need that environment where that's okay. Like, it's just, you know, maybe
Well, it
don't
might-
fail twice at the same
Yeah.
thing, but
Yes, that's what you
be
need
something
to
about-
learn from it.
It might be something about what career you want to go to. You could try something and go, oh, no,
Yeah.
I don't want to do that. I want to go. It might be, just learning for that skill set that you want to improve upon.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I remember very early in my career, I worked in an organization where it was not acceptable to fail. It wasn't acceptable to try new things. You got absolutely hammered if you didn't make the right choice. And I went from that business to another one where it was completely opposite. And with such a cultural difference and with the ability to know that I was being supported and to know that if I fell, it was okay, there were people to catch me and then I'd just keep moving forward. That's so valuable, and it's such an amazing environment to be in, because that's where you get the most growth. You can learn from the things that you haven't done so well at, rather than being terrified of them, and then you take them into the next situation that you're in. Erietta, what about you? What suggestions do you have to help women here maximize their career opportunities?
I have a brains trust that I've collected over the years. So my advice is get a game. And they're, look, mostly women, but men as well, designers, developers, product people. And they're just people I refer to check myself, am I being reasonable, unreasonable, get advice how to approach something sometimes, could be to vent. I don't want to vent at work. Have an external outlet. That was some advice given to me. I might have needed it a few years ago, but it was some of the best advice I was given. But yeah, I have a bit of a brains trust. So yeah, definitely collect that, and it's mutual as well. It can't be one way. It's got to be something that you're providing that value to your peers and likewise. Yeah,
absolutely. What about you, Erica?
Yeah, it's so funny that you use that example, Erietta, because I could see there's like over 80 people or something tuned into this. I've only got about 10 actual pictures of people on my screen, but one of them that's on there is my best mate, Michelle, that works at Microsoft now. Hi, Mish. And yeah, like of all of the different faces that could get stuck on my screen, she's there. But yeah, she's part of my girl gang that we went to high school together, so known each other for a long time. And, they act as a bit of a mirror / cheer squad, and so and in equal parts and at various times. And I think that's really helpful to have those sort of people that don't work in your business but know you and can just give you some of the home truths or support you in your decisions and things. So and then I think really the main suggestion I've got for people is just to throw your hat in the ring and just put yourself forward for these things. Like, don't wait until you think you're ready for an opportunity. Don't think, I don't know enough about tech to be able to put myself forward for this sort of role, or like blokes don't think like that. And I know there's some blokes on this call today, and hopefully you'll vouch for me here, you tend not to have the same confidence issues as what women do. And just throw your hat. Look, at the very least, if you don't get the job you're going for, you're going to learn a ton just from the interview process, right? And you're going to get some really great practice through having that conversation with people and actually stopping and reflecting on yourself and what you want and what your experience is. So I would really encourage that.
What do they say? It's like men will apply if they only have 60% of the stuff on the resume, and women will wait till they get 100%.
I've heard that a few times this week, actually.
Yes, nothing like a statistic like that on the International Women's Day week.
I mean, it's true though. I think that's why we've done so well with mentor walks and why we've been able to help so many women, because a lot of people don't have that personal board or that group of people that they can turn to. And what you get out of mentor walks is that 1 hour with diverse thinking, people from all different backgrounds, but thinking about the same things. And it's not about a mentor just telling you what to do if you're a mentee. It's about the group conversation, everybody sharing their experiences and everyone learning from each other. And I've learned more as a mentor at mentor walks than I have so many times in other areas in my life. You think that, you're the one dispensing advice, but that's actually not the right attitude to come into as a mentor. You're there to learn from everybody else and share your experiences. So I agree.
Sometimes it's helpful as well, like to have someone that is a bit of a stranger, that you haven't met before, because having to say your thoughts out loud and explain them succinctly and clearly actually is very helpful, for yourself as well. And so, so mentor walks, I think, is such a fabulous way to, be able to think about what it is you're saying, think about what you want to know, and find some support.
I've had it actually recently. I can't remember the specific example, but I've had it where I said something out loud, which in my head it sounded fantastic. And then I said it out loud and I'm like, that's really not a good idea.
But isn't that true though? Like, you say it and you go, I think I know the answer to this question.
I know. I've actually got, you can't see it here, but I've got a whiteboard next to me. All ideas go up on the whiteboard. If they're still good ideas in 2 weeks' time, they can stay up there. If they're not, they get wiped off.
Yeah, good
Sometimes
idea.
you just need them to give, sometimes you just need to give them air time.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think we've covered an awful lot of ground here, which is pretty amazing. Is there anything any of you would like to add, any advice or resources, anything that you think can help women get ahead? Thinking about the women who are on this call, they're people who are coming for inspiration, they're coming to hear your stories, they're coming to learn from your experience and from the stepping stones that you've taken along the way. I'd love to hear from each of you any extra tips or tricks that you have that can help people here today. Let's start with you, Meagan.
Okay. Look, you touched on something with the mentor walks, and that's that diversity of thinking, right? Women in tech is so much better than when I started, when I would, get someone to help me with the servers and they thought I was the receptionist and not the sysadmin. And we have come a bit of a way since then, but we're not where we want to be, obviously. And the thing that's really important to remember is you were in that room for a reason. You got the job for a reason. You're in whatever room you are in for the reason. Even if you're the only woman in there, your voice is important. What you have to say is just as important, if not more so, because of the diversity than any other person in that room. So don't be afraid to use it. Don't be afraid to speak out, either in agreement or disagreement or with a completely radical idea to anything else that's in that room. I think it's a really important thing to remember, because it's so easy to get overwhelmed by all the other voices, the voices in your head, the voices physically in the room with you, the voices of society, whatever it might be. But don't forget to use your own.
Thank you. That's really valuable. Thank you. I need to remember that myself sometimes, I think. How about you, Erietta?
Oh, look, I think just don't be, look, it's that whole, be brave, not confident, right? If you wait until you're confident, then you may actually not give something a go, because that day may actually never come. So just be brave, just try something. Like when I joined the Iconic, I was freaking terrified of leading the tech team. They were these clever, smart, young, funky people working in this tech sort of world. They were the funkiest dressers in the whole business as well. Don't tell our buyers that, but the tech team were. They had the funkiest sneakers, jeans, t-shirts, everything. And I was like, oh God, like I have got myself in way over my head here. Like, what am I going to be able to contribute here? They're just going to look at me and go, who the hell are you? But actually, as I said earlier, I realized we actually had more similarities than what we did differences. And we had the same sort of mindset and the same ability just to sit down, have a conversation, problem solve, be curious. Why do we do things this way? What about this? And actually, I think the tech side of our business has been the greatest awakening for me, and the greatest thing that I've been able to learn and embrace, and I have the most fun with that sort of side of the business. So so my fear actually has turned into absolute joy. And imagine if I had have waited to be confident to take on a role like the Iconic, you know, that would have been a shame. I may never have been confident. I was also 5 months pregnant at the time, so
I remember that.
I definitely needed to, you know, a bit of bravery. But you know, so yeah, be brave, not confident.
Amazing, thank you. Yeah, I think that's so important. And I know I can't remember what book I was reading. I read so many books and listen to so many podcasts, and the names of them fall out of my head. But one of the things was that if Microsoft was waited until they were ready to be a big tech company, to act like a big tech company, they never would have gotten anywhere.
Yeah.
So it's almost like that fake it till you make it, but you've got to know that you just push through on it.
Yeah,
definitely. And Erietta, what about you?
I would say strive for excellence, but cap your perfectionism. And I think perfectionism kind of can impact women and professional women in a very different way, in a more prevalent way than men. I think women are questioned more than men. And there's plenty of you know, studies about that. You're asked for more detail. You're asked to explain yourself more, and that's just a unfortunate reality of some status quo that you know, some people might experience more than others. But I think it kind of can manifest itself into perfectionism. So you've got to really know and think about what you can control and what you can't control, because perfectionism can make you very rigid as well, and very closed-minded and not adaptable. So it still doesn't mean that you're not shooting for a quality target. And you've got to distinguish those two things.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I know I used to be a perfectionist, and then the more I added to my plate, the more I realized that I don't agree with the done is better than perfect, but we have a saying in our business, which is ship your best. And as long as you're confident that it is your best, it doesn't have to be perfect. Fantastic.
Absolutely. I had to unlearn it too. And repeat phrases like good is good enough, and you know, things like that.
Yeah, I've got a few little post-it notes up on my desk that remind me to just slow down and take things as they should be taken, rather than being a perfectionist. So we've got a few minutes for some questions, and we've had a couple come through on the chat. One of them is, what are the key software fundamentals or programs that you'd recommend to self-learn before stepping into the tech space? And I think Meagan or Erietta, that's a good one for you.
Yeah, hell no, don't ask me.
Me either.
Go for it, girls.
That's really funny. I mean, in user experience design, it changes all the time. You know, so we've got our kind of design kind of tool set that we use, and there's specific tools in that, like Figma, that we use to prototype in. But actually the best design tool really is like pencils and paper, and a design tool of user experience design, because that's kind of grounded in a discipline called human-centered design, is research. So the methodology is actually really quite wide, and it's not all about the tooling. I think a lot of designers, although you have user interface designers where that tooling and that software is a much more prevalent part of their role, I find designers who are too reliant on tools are too rigid and they don't spend time in the problem space enough. They don't spend time thinking about the customer enough. So I think there are tools that aren't technical, like scenarios, journeys, those sorts of things, and the research insight that you gain to make those meaningful and authentic, that are actually much more important, and make a much kind of more impact to the user experience than whatever software you're using. You can prototype something, I mean, very crudely and painfully in PowerPoint. So these things are important. They're productivity tools, but I think there's just lots out there that's not about the specific tool. Unless you're a coder, and I'm sure they have their specific tools. Yeah.
Yeah, but even with, engineering, it's been a while since I've had hands on keyboard to that level of technical thing. And one of the things that happens with tech is there's always a flavor of the moment with the favorite language that people are using to code their websites and the favorite tool that people are using. And that flavor of the moment might stick around for 10 years, might stick around for 5 months, depending on how many people adopt that type of tool and adopt that language. So I would say, look for jobs that are interesting to you. Look at what kind of languages those jobs are seeking in their applicants and the tools that they're using, and get enough skill. As Erietta said, don't go become an expert on it and wait until you're super confident in that particular language. Get enough skill in that language and that tool in those jobs that are really fascinating to you, and then start putting your hat out there and start looking for those roles that are in there, because it will change. Once you get into those roles, the languages are changing, the tools are changing. It's not going to be a forever thing.
Actually, that's a fantastic segue into the next question, which is, do you have any advice on navigating the job titles that are in different companies? There's so many different languages that people use. How do you actually figure out what's what? Like, is there any sort of common language that people can use? How do you approach the conversation when applying for these jobs if you're not 100% familiar with the terminology that they've used in the ad?
Oh, look, I think in an interview process, you should be interviewing the organization as much as they're interviewing you. So I would recommend to you that you have a list of questions to dig into that and find the answer to, really understand, if I park the job title to the side, what is the actual job? Who am I interacting with? Like, who are my kind of customers? Who will be my everyday sort of people that I'm working with, collaborating with, not just what the job title is, and really, interview the organization you're going. You don't think that it's just a one-way conversation or interview.
Thank you. Erietta, were you going to say something?
Yeah, because user experience is a little, I'm not going to call it, I'm just about to call it what I said I'm not going to call it. It can feel fickle. It's not. But it can feel fickle. So when I started out, as I mentioned, the specific kind of skill set or capability was called human-computer interaction, and then it was information architecture. Then it was experience architects. Then it was user experience design, and then it's product design, and so it actually shifts a lot. To a degree, all those titles still exist. And sometimes companies do have their kind of, I would say, preference, and that preference reveals something about how they're practicing design in the organization.
Okay.
So if you're into design, then, I in my career, I did find meetups and conferences very helpful to kind of get a sense of the vernacular and what it meant in different companies in different contexts. And I know Twitter can be a dumpster fire of humanity, but if you're following the right people and shielding yourself from that kind of noise, I actually also find it very, very useful if you follow the right people for professional conversations and to get an ear out for how your discipline or the discipline you're interested in might be practiced and what it's called.
Amazing, thank you. We've got time for one more question, which is an amazing one, I think, here. If you don't have a tech girl gang, if you don't have your personal board or your people that you call when you need to know something, or people that you can trust, the way that you were talking about, Erietta, how do you go about building that tribe?
look, it starts with one, right? You don't have to have 25 people that you're in this big group of people with from day one. You start with one person. And Erietta's mentioned meetups a couple of times, and that's a great place to start because you're thinking the same kind of things. You're curious about the same thing, but it will grow as you grow with your career, as you meet different people in your organization that are in a different department, a different area, and begin to expand your circle. So I don't think you should rush to get that amazing, perfect gang of people that you can bounce the brains off right from day one.
Yeah, start to the dialogue.
Well, I think that's what things like mentor walks help facilitate as well. You know, you meet, it's like that whole networking sort of thing. People think networking is this fluffy swanning around with a glass of champagne and eating canapes, right?
Well, they're negative about it.
Yeah, like they talk about it in this disparaging. I had this guy I worked with years ago that used to always say to me, I'm much smarter than you. I can do better spreadsheets, blah, 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 but you're going to go further because you're a better networker. And I was like, you're an idiot. Like, you know, I don't want to be creating the spreadsheets all the time. I want to be reviewing them more. And, you know, and networking is actually just going out and talking to interesting people and having sounding boards and learning things from people and being able to contribute back to them as well. And so I would encourage you to lean into the word networking. It doesn't have to be a big flash fluffy sort of thing. It could be just one-on-one conversation after a mentor walks event, and or, you know, just going to some other sort of event and just keeping in touch with people. So yeah,
absolutely, definitely. Thank you so much for that. We're pretty much done here. I think we've covered enormously interesting and varied areas. Thank you all so much. I really appreciate it on behalf of Mentor Walks and on behalf of our community. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with us. And of course, thank you for sharing your experiences and being open and honest about what it takes to be in this space from all of your different perspectives. Just a couple of little housekeeping things for Mentor Walks. I'm reminding you, like I said I would, about do one thing for another woman after you finish here. Something little or something big, check on someone who's having a hard time or call out an injustice when you see it. We've got quite a few events coming up in the next few weeks. We've got on the 11th of March, we've got Brisbane, which considering the current climate at the moment is now a virtual event. On the 18th of March, we've got Canberra and Wollongong, which are also virtual. Sydney on the 25th of March, which I'm really, really hoping is going to be in person, but we'll see a little bit closer to the time. We're launching on the 30th of March in Adelaide, which is very exciting, our very first walk there. And then on the 6th of April, we've got our next conversation series, which is about taming the imposter with one of our mentors, Karina Keisler. So thank you again for coming. Thank you all for giving up time in your day to be with us, and have a wonderful rest of your day and stay healthy and safe.